Building the Ogallie Scenic Railway has been quite a challenge. This is the list of the top 10 things we learned while building the railroad. Number 10. Finding and restoring locomotives and cars takes time and talent. And boy, does it ever. We will talk a little bit more about how hard it is to come up with this equipment later, but we wanted to say a little bit about our talent. We've got people from all walks of life that work for the railroad, either on an employee or a volunteer basis. We have most of the guys have done a lot of different things. So when we combine all our talents, it turns out we can do quite a bit to get this equipment restored, build track, anything else we need to do. So the talent pool here at the railroad is quite deep. We've been finding this equipment, getting it restored the best we can, in some cases building it from scratch. It takes a lot of time, but we've found ways to get it done with our group. Now, our group is not that large. We just have a very small number of people. But that pool of people is growing over time. And as we take on more projects and as more time goes by, other people, come into it and they volunteer to help us. And so it all gets done one way or another. And there's also a lot of research, of course, that has to be done to go into these projects. And that's another time-consuming thing that we have to do here. But keeps the authenticity and the functionality of the cars at their best. Number 9. 3-foot narrow gauge equipment is very hard to locate. When we first started the railroad, we began acquiring equipment with the purchase of our 2 Hunslet locomotives in the late summer of 2021. And immediately after that, Rick Rowlands from Ohio sold us our first rolling stock, which was a pair of 2 flat cars and truck sets to go with them that used to be part of the Badger Ammunition Works in Wisconsin. And so we started with that. In our first winter in the shop, we had plenty of things to work on. The following year, we ended up buying 8 dirt cars from the Palmetto Brick Company in South Carolina, and we were able to work on those as well. But we got to a point where it was starting to become kind of hard to find existing equipment. The problem with what we're doing here is that we are running industrial sized 3-foot gauge equipment, which is the smaller pattern of 3-foot gauge. The larger pattern 3-foot gauge on a railroad like the Durango and Silverton all has much bigger wheels, much bigger rail than we do. And so that is a limiting factor for what we can buy. But we kind of made do with it. We've made the freight trucks or the industrial trucks that we got work on our passenger cars so far. Same with the locomotives. And we continue now, continuing on to look for more equipment wherever we can find it. Number 8. Wider and more stable access roads are better. So when the property was recently purchased, we had one kind of a questionable road with a couple of dog legs in it coming into the property, and it was covered with Class 5 gravel. And, we thought that we might be able to get away with that. But we didn't realize just how many semi-trucks are going to be coming in, cement trucks coming in, deliveries of rail, deliveries of cars and other heavy stuff, heavy shop equipment. And so we realized that we needed to beef up the road system, change from Class 5 to this more fine gray granite rock for the driveway. And of course we started using mats too, which made a huge difference. We hadn't done that previously, so it worked out great. Number 7. It's not impossible to build a railroad over hilly wet clay. Now, this is a lesson that took us a long time to learn. Not a long time to learn, but a long time to solve. Our property, as you've probably seen in a lot of our videos, is different throughout the property. The lower part, it's very, very wet, sticky, thick clay. And as you can see here, we are trying to finish off this part of the right-of-way, the first year of construction back in 2022. Try to get some control over the water. It was our first year of construction, of course, so we were learning a lot of lessons about this clay. We had a soil scientist come out and work with us at one point, and we determined that everywhere you go, there was either this brown, slimy clay, or there was black clay that looked like regular dirt, but it was actually had the same clay content as the brown stuff. So one of the big lessons was that when you dig a hole in this clay, you better fill it up or it'll be full of water and it will never go away. And so we got really good at our right-of-way, keeping that right-of-way up high, using plenty of ballast everywhere we could. And we continue, now it's been 2 years down the road, and we are continuing to regrade some of these embankments on the sides of the tracks to try to keep that water back and away from the right-of-way. So it's been a constant challenge, but we did figure out that we could do it. It is possible. It just takes a little imagination. Number 6, don't rush building the roadbed. Now, this was kind of a hard thing for us to learn because we were so enthusiastic when we first started building the railroad. Obviously, anybody who's starting a really cool project like this wants to get into it. They want to throw everything they've got into it. And sometimes you can get ahead of yourself. I'm sure many of you have gotten ahead of yourselves on different projects and had to go back and start over or redo it in some way or another. Now, we've had to do a little bit of that here, but in the early stages of the game. But, as we've gone on and discovered what we can and can't do on this clay ground, the way it is, we've developed techniques and ways of building these berms for the track and a lot of the cuts. Again, getting the drainage just right that we didn't know in the beginning, or we had, limited knowledge of how to do that. There are a lot of professional people in the business of grading and excavation that are out there, and we have plenty of them on our staff. But nobody's ever tackled a railroad design like this before, and how to do that. And so we've had to bring in a lot of culverts to help control the water, and the liberal use of ballast. We always thought in the beginning that it might be an area that we might be able to skimp in a little bit. But we have since completely changed our mind. And it turns out that ballast saves the whole project. And it will really, stiffen up that subsoil as you're going. So we put this track down and we can always come back and add more to it. So there's a lot of lessons learned about roadbed. Number 5. Finding rail is challenging, but laying rail is, it's not so bad. And this is something that we have shown you in many of the videos that we've done in the past. But in the planning process for this railroad, when we were first looking at the logistics of it, how we were going to put it together, how many people, how much machinery we would need, it seemed like a very daunting task to envision laying all of this track. And it turns out once you get a small group of guys together that have done it quite a bit, and you get your techniques down, it goes very, very quickly. I think our longest track laying in one day with an 11-man crew was somewhere in the neighborhood of 350 feet. And that's straight and curved track. So it's not as bad as it looks. And our rail is 40-pound rail, so it's not really large rail. Very easy to work with. As you can see here, it bends around corners very easily. We've got the techniques down on how to bend it, how to join it, how to maneuver it, how to tamp it when the project requires us to get the track level after we've got our top ballast on. So all of these things that go into laying track are not as daunting as we first thought they would be. And so that's been a great relief to everybody that works on the railroad, knowing that, when it's time to lay track, we put out the call for volunteers, and as you can see, we usually get quite a few because they know they can do it. They've got the experience that tells them that it's not going to be that bad. Number 4, trackside service roads make things much easier, and it's quite true. In the beginning of our railroad, we didn't have or didn't plan on having roads everywhere alongside the track, but since then we've changed our mind and they're in most stretches of the railroad. Number 3, our volunteers make it possible to turn our vision into reality. And I can't say enough about the people that have helped us build this railroad. You can, build a project like this with 1 or 2 people, but it would take forever. We have done an unimaginable amount of work here just in the past two years. And it's all thanks to our volunteers. We've got our regular staff, but the volunteers are what really make this thing happen. They're enthusiastic. They enjoy the railroad. They've come to love the railroad and want to help us out in any way they can. They're very dedicated people, and we really couldn't do this project without them, like I said. And they come from a lot of different backgrounds too, so we get experience from them and they share their experience with us. So hats off to our volunteers.
We're on the Golden Spike.
You guys, I'll be laughing. All right. It'll be in by then. We won't be able to turn it. All right. You guys did 90%.
This is the last spike from the phase 1 loop. What's the date today?
Put her in tight. No. That's Dave's job.
What's the date today?
Today is October 4th.
2022.
And the railway is officially completed.
Phase 1.
Hey!
Phase 1 is officially completed. All right, guys. Great job. And then take a ride.
Number 2, building a narrow gauge railroad always costs more than you think. And this is probably self-evident to anybody who's watching our channel, but the railroad is expensive. But the strange thing is that you don't know what direction the expenses are going to always come from. For example, ballast. You can never have too much ballast on the railroad, and we're finding that out. The ballast is one of the absolute key ingredients to building this rail line. There's the initial construction of the railroad, which involves sub-ballast that's under the track that we lay first, followed by top ballast, which you would expect. But then the other thing is that as time goes on and this track begins to settle, you have to keep adding more ballast underneath it and tamping it up to firm up what's underneath. And we've had areas in the railroad that are very swampy, that remain swampy, that are continually eating up ballast. Things like railroad ties, and we use guardrail timbers that are recycled for our railroad ties. We've used a heck of a lot of them. I don't know what the exact count is, but there's an awful lot of them on the railroad. And then there's the rail and the switches. The switches have to be custom made. They don't just grow on trees. You know, they're 40-pound rails, so they just don't exist. And things like spikes, and then you've got the buildings on the property. We've been building buildings here about one a year for the past 3 years, and we continue to improve the property that way. And finally, number 1, the results are definitely worth all the effort. When you do a project like this and you've never done it before, you really don't know what kind of reaction you're going to get, and that's kind of what the fruits of our labor are all about. After building the railroad, running it on a limited basis for the last 2 summers, we've come to find out that it's very popular. And we have a lot of regular riders that come by. Again, it's not open to the public yet. It may never be open to the public. We're still not sure what we're going to do with that. But for those who do ride our trains, it's an experience that they remember, and they really enjoy it. The kids especially, of course, are always very excited. And that's why we do it, you know, for personal enjoyment and for those who are interested in trains. And even nature, the deer seem to love the railroad too, so it's been a smashing success so far.